It's honestly pretty hard to believe that Mario Kart World has already been out for over 2 months now. Honestly, it's been a blast. Just getting all the Cups 3-starred, exploring everything on the world map, and of course just hopping online with some races. Well, when I can play some 3-lap races of course, which is still kind of a little bit of an issue. That said, I can't help but feel slightly disappointed that we haven't gotten any real post-release updates just yet. Maybe I'm completely delusional, but I really love what Mario Kart Tour did with its constant updates every 2 weeks. That of course was in the form of some new courses, course variants, characters, skins, karts, gliders, and even some big events like team rallies. It always just kept the game feeling really fresh. And while the game itself wasn't everyone's cup of tea, the rank mode for example always gave players at all different skill levels something to just chase. And to me personally, it was just plain fun. There was always something to grind every week, and just getting something new in the games always kept that hype alive. The good news is, we've kind of got something recently that kind of reminds me a little bit of that. Not in its entirety, but it is something to be relatively hyped about for potential for the future. Of course, I wish Mario Kart World did something very similar to Tour with constant updates every 2 weeks, but this game is on a much bigger scale than Tour, and the amount of effort that's gone into this base game is huge. But that's not why I'm here. I just can't shake the feeling that DLC is very likely on the horizon, especially with rumors swirling about a Mario 40th anniversary, probably a presentation of some sort. And there's also some kind of leaked, I don't want to say leaked, but leaked information or just information out there, and some fan theories as well that kind of suggest that DLC could potentially be there. Is this guaranteed? Absolutely not. But I do think there's a good chance of DLC coming relatively soon, and I just want to break down all the information that we currently know of, some pretty wild theories for example, and some not so wild and just make sense, but I just want to go over all of it in one video. That way, we can just look back later on and see if we were right or wrong. And fair warning as well, this video will contain potential spoilers, and some direct spoilers too, so if you don't want to be spoiled for Mario Kart World or Donkey Kong Bananza, I would really suggest clicking off this video right now. And before we get into it too, I am giving away a copy of Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bananza next week on Wednesday, so just make sure you subscribe to this channel and you'll be in the running for it. Alright, so let's go ahead and start what I think is the juiciest piece of information that's potentially tied to Mario Kart World DLC. And this one comes straight from Donkey Kong Bananza's credits, and then of course cross-checking it with Mario Kart World's credits. Eagle-eyed players did notice something very strange. 2 of the voice actors credited in Donkey Kong Bananza are also listed in Mario Kart World's credits. Now, that normally wouldn't mean much, but there is a catch. There aren't any characters in Mario Kart World right now that those 2 voice actors actually voiced. Not that we know of anyway. In Bananza, Yu Hayashi voices Void Kong, and Tetsugo Mogami voices none other than King K. Rool. Both of their names also show up in Mario Kart World's cast list, and I even cross-checked this on the Mario Kart wiki. They're definitely credited in Mario Kart World, but they don't actually voice any players in the actual playable roster. You could say the writing's kind of on the wall here. Fans immediately jumped to the conclusion that this is our first hint at future DLC characters. That would mean Void Kong and King K. Rool would be making their way into Mario Kart World. And honestly, that would be freaking massive. Not just having them in karts, but just the potential crossover potential in general here for future titles would be massive. I mean, King K. Rool would absolutely blow people's minds. That would be seriously dope. However, I do want to play devil's advocate for just a second. Voice acting credits can be pretty messy. It is entirely possible that Hayashi and Mogami did work for NPCs in the open world areas. And if you've played the game, you would know there are hundreds of little background characters and just random interactions that do need voices. Sometimes actors even get credited for just placeholder work, or even minor lines that don't really stand out. So, while this is a strong piece of evidence, it's still not a rock solid confirmation. There's always the chance that Bananza's characters were just cut from Mario Kart World, or Nintendo's just reusing talent in the background. But still, you have to admit it's pretty interesting. If we do put the positive spin on this though, imagine at a bare minimum that DLC drops and we get Void Kong and King K. Rool's playable characters. That alone will be hype, but at the same time, it'd be kind of strange if we got them before Diddy Kong, Dixie Kong, or even Funky Kong. I mean, Diddy Kong and Funky Kong are practically staples in Mario Kart history. Diddy especially feels like a no-brainer since he actually featured quite prominently in Bananza 2. If it were up to me and I would be creating this, which I'm not, I'd love to see an entire DK themed cup as part of this DLC. 2 brand new tracks directly inspired from Bananza, plus just 2 more that tie into the world regions of the Mario Kart World map. Maybe all 4 aren't just going to be DK focused, maybe some retro tracks that just kind of fit that area, but it'd be awesome to see just Bananza represented in gameplay. You could even be collecting banana chips, for example, instead of coins, kind of like how Yoshi's Island had the special coins in 8 Deluxe, or Hyrule Circuit, for example, swapped them for rupees, and Animal Crossing, of course, had the bells instead of coins. And easily with a theme cup like this, you could easily justify bringing in a few more Bananza cast members with races, just like Poppy Kong, for example, Grumpy Kong, Dixie Kong from Tour. The lineup is genuinely just right there waiting. And don't worry, I haven't forgotten the most obvious DLC opportunity here, costumes, or alternative variants of the characters. I've mentioned this a few times, but Donkey Kong and Pauline are the only characters in Mario Kart World who don't really have multiple outfits. Every single other main character got several. It's honestly weird they didn't at least recycle a few designs from Mario Kart Tour. I mean, if this was going to happen, Pauline could easily just use a younger version of herself like Teen Pauline from Bananza. And of course, Donkey Kong would have 100 of alternate costumes from that game, same with Pauline. It honestly feels like costumes feels like the bare minimum for DLC here. That said, I really hope they don't stop at just a Bananza pack. As cool as that would be, it set the standard for even bigger tie-ins. Imagine if Mario Kart World DLC just becomes a way to link major Nintendo releases going forward. Bananza gets a cup maybe, Kirby Air Riders, which we saw a direct of like yesterday. Then of course something like Zelda or Pokemon, the potential is massive. Maybe not those big crossover ones would be possible, but at least in the internal Mario universe, it would really make a lot of sense. Plus, I'd love there to also be a few items just to freshen the gameplay up as well. If I'm being greedy, even like a rank mode like Tor had. I mean, there is this brand new event thing which we'll talk about in a second, which could easily work perfectly here. And the big question is, when will this actually be revealed? Well, they could just do a Twitter drop like they've been doing a lot of lately, but I do think a Mario 40th anniversary just to celebrate his existence would be the perfect place for this. If Nintendo is lining up a big direct for that milestone, I honestly can't think of a better time to announce some new Mario Kart World content. You could even throw in a few Mario history stuff as well, like retro outfits, tracks, or just a full nostalgia package. They kind of did this for Mario's 35th anniversary, where they literally announced Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, and even announced Retro Mario and DK Jr. for Tour, which honestly was pretty huge at the time. I was a fan of Tour prior to this, but this just had me locked in to get him, which I did in the end without breaking the bank, which was nice. It's important to note at the time of recording this, there is no direct confirmed for the 40th anniversary. However, I do think Nintendo want to celebrate this in a pretty big way, so I would say a direct is likely. And if there is a direct, I would also kind of assume that World would be likely too, because it's a big freaking title and it's a launch title. And Bananza content would make sense, given obviously the direct link with the voice actors. So I do think this one is possible. Alright, so shifting gears just a little bit, because this one actually blew my mind when I found out. Mario Kart World secretly has a brand new online event system. Yeah, events, like tucked away in the menu. If you go into online and press the back button, there's now an option to search for events. And right now, the first one is a summer vacation skill test. It's kind of hidden, but if you type in the code 2378, it does pop up. And the crazy part is that you can actually practice for it ahead of time before the actual event goes live. Right now, the official event is scheduled for August 23rd, 2025, and it'll run for about 2 hours. Basically, you just jump into 150cc races, try to rack up points, and the kicker is the top 100 players will actually get showcased. Not just overall either, there'll be a top player of each character, which is a really cool idea. Just because it gives people a reason to actually rep different races instead of just picking the meta picks. Now, before you do get too excited, the catch is that this first event is technically only for Japan. Nintendo even says this on their official site. So yes, you can enter a practice from anywhere, but if you are outside of Japan, you won't actually place on the official leaderboards. Still though, if this is how Nintendo's testing the waters for future just events and just stuff they can do, I'd bet some pretty good money we will see some summer global events just rolling out pretty soon. And hopefully this is kind of like the rank mode from Tour just getting brought in here. But regardless, it's still pretty exciting. And hey, if they release DLC, it'd be pretty cool if there was some kind of event lined up with it. And maybe a rewarding game like an outfit or something. I don't know. Then the last point I want to cover is music theory, because this one's getting a lot of credibility online and I'm still not sure how I feel about it, so really take this on with a grain of salt. I don't really buy into this. I'm going to keep this pretty much straight to the point and not go crazy in depth just to save you some time. As you know, Mario Kart World has one of the most expansive and complete collections of Mario soundtrack. Not just for Mario in general, but specifically for the history of Mario Kart courses. Even tracks that are kind of considered obscure, simple, or just repetitive are actually in there. Just like DS Yoshi Falls, for example, GCN Dry Desert, GBA Yoshi Desert, or even N64 DK Jungle Parkway. But after looking at the full soundtrack, there are actually some noticeable exclusions from the series, those being GBA Sky Garden, GBA Sunset Wilds, GBA Snowland, GCN Wario Coliseum and Waluigi Stadium because they share music, Wii Koopa Cape, and Piranha Plant Cove from Mario Kart Tour. All of these courses actually have unique music that isn't represented in the current OST. Some of them, like Koopa Cape, Sky Garden, and Wario Coliseum and Stadium, are pretty iconic tracks, and honestly would make really worthy inclusions other than some of the obscure tracks that actually didn't make the cut. That's been making people think that Nintendo could be holding these back for some DLC, and I don't necessarily agree with that. There are actually a few other interesting soundtrack omissions, though they don't necessarily point as strongly to new tracks. For example, N64 Banshee Boardwalk is a pretty simple track, and it shares elements with SNES Ghost Valley, which is obviously in the OST. That also goes the same with GBA Boo Lake and also Broken Pierre. But then we have all the different Bowser's Castles like GBA, DS, Wii, and 3DS, where Bowser's Castle themes are already kind of present in Mario Kart World, and we've never actually seen a retro version outside of SNES and GBA. TS Luigi's Mansion also shares its main theme with the Luigi's Mansion title screen, which is, I guess, a soundtrack, so you could say that kind of overlaps. 3DS Cheep Cheep Lagoon also shares elements with DS Cheep Cheep Beach. Then you have 3DS Neo Bowser City, which kind of borrows motifs from Mario Circuit and Toad Circuit. When it comes to some guest and crossover style tracks, for example, like 3DS Woohoo Loop or Woohoo Island courses, those kind of for me are only absent for another reason, that being the soundtrack and world is entirely Mario only. Their exclusion doesn't really tell us much either way. The same goes with Tour's Yoshi's Island, just because the theme is just the athletic theme for Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. And then of course you have all the different city tracks. There are actually a fair few of these music tracks that don't actually are in the game, just from my memory in general. Bangkok Rush is in the game. I've heard it myself a couple times, so there's a few that are in there and there's a few that's not. But I wouldn't think that city tracks will come into this game, as they're all in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and it was kind of a Mario Kart Tour thing. Look, all I have to say is I don't think missing a theme guarantees that a course will be added. And having a track theme present doesn't automatically mean it's excluded. But I do think a handful of those could potentially make the cut. Just things like Sky Garden, Sunset Wilds, Snowland, Mario Coliseum or Stadium, Koopa Cape, for example, and even like Yoshi's Island. That's only because I really want Yoshi's Island in, so please bring it to Nintendo. Piranha Plant Cove is one that would really struggle in my opinion, because imagine racing that entire course on water this time. That's going to be a hard one to incorporate. But what do you think? Do you reckon this idea has any merit at all? And just from everything that we have discussed in this video, do you think that DLC is actually likely? And if so, do you think that any of these theories have any sort of credibility behind them? Because right at this point in time, I have absolutely no idea. I'm just trying to get all the pieces of information into one video, and we can just come back and enjoy this all together in a few months and either laugh or say, hey, we're kind of onto something. So I've always liked the speculation for Mario Kart, and this is just another opportunity to do that. But if you did enjoy this video, it'd be super appreciated if you could leave a like, comment, and of course subscribe, as it really helps the channel a lot. Me and my good friend Peach Toadstool are also doing a music series on the channel right now, which has a fair few videos already uploaded, just basically being a back-to-back soundtrack, which essentially is just a really short and just changes and analysis series for all the tracks in Mario Kart World. So make sure to check them all out down below, and I'll be sure to see you all in the next video, because I have a lot more stuff planned now that my old man's better, so I'm really looking forward to getting cracked into that. But until next time, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya!